Last time, God's narrative focused on the life of Joseph, one of Isaac's 12 sons. Hated by his brothers for his father's very evident favoritism, they sold him into slavery in Egypt. He experienced some major ups and downs, but with God orchestrating the outcomes, he was eventually promoted to governor of Egypt. In time, he was reunited with his family, and at the invitation of the Pharaoh, they came and settled in Egypt. We pick up the narrative again a few generations later. The descendants of Jacob, or Israel, as he was also known, are living still in Egypt, and they now number in the hundreds of thousands. This is in Exodus chapter 1, verses 6 to 7. They have not assimilated into Egyptian culture, but have retained their own distinct ethnic identity and their monotheistic religion. In other words, the worship of the one true creator God. As a people, they are wealthy and have become a powerful force in Egypt. Of course, the king or pharaoh who knew Joseph is long gone, and the one currently on the throne has no affection or loyalty toward the Israelites. This is in Exodus chapter 1, verses 8 to 10. They present a dilemma, in fact, for him and the ruling elite of the country. Their skills are needed for Egypt's economy, a growing world power at the time, but militarily they represent a real threat. What if they side with an enemy during an attempted invasion? The solution, Pharaoh decides, is to retain their skills and the sheer manpower, but to take away the freedom that they've had to, up till this point, to pursue their own prosperity. Exodus 1, 11 to 22 describes how they are made slaves, purposely mistreated and brutalized. Their lives, the text says, were made bitter, but the oppression does not have the desired result, at least in terms of population. As the years go by, the Israelites continue to grow in numbers. Pharaoh's iron fist clenches tighter. In the first recorded instance of ethnic cleansing, it's decreed that newborn males are to be drowned in the Nile River. It's not difficult to see God's arch-enemy, Satan, maliciously at work in these events, fanning the hatred and encouraging the attempt to suppress, even to utterly destroy God's people. He would not have been pleased to see Jacob's descendants growing into a real ethnic force, a nation, although yet without a homeland. He did not want to see the line flourishing by which God had said one would come to crush him, to take away his power over the earth and its inhabitants. This must be stopped, and in the Egyptians, already trapped in his web of deceit, he has willing, if unknowing, servants. Ironic, isn't it, that they thought they were the slave masters? It goes without saying that none of this came as a surprise to God. He had, after all, foretold it centuries before to Abraham, saying that his descendants would be strangers in a land where they'd be oppressed as slaves. Remember that? God was under no obligation to relieve their suffering or to rescue them from the fierce oppression. Of course, he had made promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it's not like he's just held in some technical, objective way by his word, although, of course, he will never break it. But his motivations are also very personal, as he's already shown in his narrative to us. He's moved by human suffering. He loves to show mercy, to be kind. He reaches out and rescues people who know that they need him. And so he sets in motion a plan to deliver the Israelites, his people. Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 to 4, describes how a couple from the tribe of Levi have a son. After 3 months of trying to keep him hidden from the Egyptian authorities, a long-term solution must be found. Placing him in a waterproof basket among the reeds at the edge of the Nile, his mother has her daughter watch to see what will happen. She feels that he's a special child. Will he be killed like so many other baby boys, or will God do something? Pharaoh's daughter, coming with her attendants to bathe, finds the child, and though realizing he's Hebrew, decides that he's to live. She names him Moses and later adopts him as her own child. This is in Exodus chapter 2, verse 10. He receives an Egyptian education, probably the most advanced of any in the world at the time. God, we'll see, was equipping and positioning Moses to contribute in his plans to rescue the Israelites. As we've noted a number of times, God gives real responsibilities to humans, and we'll see as the narrative continues that he also equips his people and draws them into his efforts to rescue others in need. As an adult, Moses starts to feel empathy for the oppressed Hebrew people with whom he shares a common ethnicity, if not an upbringing. Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 to 22 describes how he visits the areas where they live and work. At one point, he kills an Egyptian after seeing him beating a Hebrew. And burying the body, Moses thinks he's in the clear. But when the news gets out, even reaching Pharaoh's ears, Moses is forced to run away. The text says to Midian. It's probably somewhere to the northeast of Egypt. Moses married and settled in the area, isolated for many years from both his Hebrew birth community and the Egyptian one in which he grew up. The narrative tells us, this is in Exodus chapter 2, verses 23 to 25, that although Pharaoh died, to be succeeded, of course, by another, the misery of the Israelites did not lessen. God says he heard their cry for help. He remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, to Isaac and Jacob, and the text says he knew it was time to act. God is reminding us in his story of things we've already noted before. He's compassionate and merciful and eager to help those who recognize their need for him. He's also faithful and absolutely committed to the things he's said that he'll do. Just like Isaac on the altar, the situation of the Israelites provides us with a powerful analogy of the plight of the human race as a whole. Held in bondage by Satan's deception and in servitude to sin, the merciless taskmaster, there is no escape, no hope, except for God, unless he has a plan, unless he sends someone. So God listened and began to act. But typically, it's not in a way we'd expect. One day, Moses leads the flocks he's tending into the wilderness area on a mountain that will prove significant in the future, Mount Sinai, which is also called Horeb. There, on the mountain, he sees an extraordinary sight, a bush engulfed in flames, but without being burned up. He's awestruck when his name is called from out of the burning bush, especially when the speaker identifies himself as no less than the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You can read about it in Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to chapter 4, verses 17. The Lord says that he has seen the oppression of his people and heard their cries of distress. Now he intends to rescue them and lead them out back to the land of Canaan, currently inhabited by a number of other people groups. But this is not just for information. The Lord tells Moses that he's sending him, Moses, to Pharaoh, and that he's chosen him to lead the people out of Egypt. Moses is horrified. He doesn't feel qualified. He has no authority, no position. God reassures Moses that he is with him, and as a sign, tells him that one day he, that is Moses, will lead the Israelites to this very mountain to worship God there. But Moses remains dubious. If he goes to the Israelites saying the God of their ancestors has sent him, they're going to want to know who it is. What's his name? Who should he say has sent him? In reply, God says something linguistically simple, but immeasurably deep in its implications. He says, I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent you. And adds that this is his eternal name, one to be remembered for all generations. This is in Exodus chapter 3, verses 14 to 15. Actually, let's read that. God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. This name, which he'll use again under very different circumstances in his narrative, is the most profound utterance possible in human language. We glimpse its infinite depths, but we know we're never going to get very far below the surface. It's God declaring verbally, in words, in a single name, his own eternal absolute being, and by extension, the complete ontological dependence on him of everything, including us as humans, our dependence for our very being. Remarkably, perhaps, despite this incredible name that he's been given, despite other signs and undertakings from God, Moses is still reluctant. He pleads his lack of speaking ability. The interaction between them is wonderfully real and personal. God's patience finally wears thin. He asks Moses, who made his mouth? Whose decision was it to have humans speak or hear or see anyway? When Moses still asks for someone else to go, God agrees to allow Aaron, Moses' brother, to be the spokesman. Eventually, the two of them go to the leaders of the Israelite community and tell them what God has said to Moses about rescuing them from bondage. This is in Exodus chapter 4, verses 29 to 30. After they see the miraculous signs from God, they're convinced. The text in Exodus 4:31 says that when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped.